Hey there, badass dream makers. This is the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast. It's Alex, your badass dream maker host. I'm here because I believe that all humans deeply desire and thrive in loving relationships. And let me tell you, it's possible because many do find the love of their dreams and more. I'm just here as a guide to help you through the variety of obstacles and hurdles in dating and relationships so that you can also find the love of your dreams. And you're bound to learn about yourself as well. So, 2-in-1 deal. We will get deep here, and you may feel triggered at times. Triggers and discomfort are part of a growth process. However, please use discretion as to how much discomfort you are ready for. Now, let's jump into this juicy episode and get you what you want. Hello, and welcome back to the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast. This is Alex, your host. I am coming to you from a place of love and especially inspiration because today I am sharing with you a conversation I had with Haley O'Connell, who is a woman's mindset and dream life coach as well as a quantum coach. She is a peer and friend of mine from the certification program that we did together, and a big reason why I am so excited to have Haley on my podcast is because she is a vangirl. She has been traveling Australia for the past several months by herself with her camper van, and that is something that I've been wanting to do for so long, so I'm so inspired by her. And she, at the same time, has been coaching women to reprogram their subconscious mind to help them get unstuck. And she is the fucking queen of the fuck it moment and takes life by the reins. And she is trying to help people know what is possible for them on the other side of that fuck it moment, aka peace, love, fun, just all that is encompassed in your dreams. So without further ado, let us welcome Haley O'Connell. Hello, Haley. Thank you for joining me on the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast. I really appreciate it. I think that you have a lot of unique content that we're going to share with these listeners that is going to be unlike anyone else I'll host. And I mean, I hope I meet more people like you and have similar stories, but it's definitely a unique one. And I think that's why I was so excited to have you on here to talk about it. So yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to dive into, I think I can't say relationship in terms of relationship with other people because I'm very single, but relationship with yourself and how that, I think, can lend so beautifully to all of the other relationships that you have in your life. So again, thank you for having me.
Yeah. I think that the relationship with ourselves is really what defines the relationships we have with other people, just every single one of them. So I completely agree. And so leading into that, I know that you spend a lot of time in solitude and you do a lot of solo traveling, really cool solo traveling with a, what do you call it, a van or a van? You call it the van?
Camper
Yeah,
van. Yeah.
camper van. Yeah. So Haley travels in a camper van all around Australia, which is amazing and definitely a dream of mine to do someday. And yeah, and she's doing all this without a partner. She's chasing her dreams without a partner, and she's doing this in solitude and working on her relationship with herself. And Haley, I'm gonna pass the mic to you, and I just want to hear, like, what's that experience been like, and what stands out to you so far? And also, if you want to share the story as to why you started doing that, we can also start there. That would make most sense.
So I've been on the road for about 5 months now. I've done, I don't know how to convert it for miles for your listeners. I'm sorry, but I've done just over 20,000 kilometers so far. So it's been amazing. I am almost completely on the opposite side of the country to where my hometown is and where my family is. And yeah, it's really been a trip of a lifetime. It's been a dream come true. It's something that I've always wanted to do. Ever since I was a young girl. I remember I was 15 years old and I was in design and tech class up the back of the room designing a project with my good friend at the time, and we were part of our project was that we had to do the budget for traveling around Australia. And I remember doing that even then. And our dream as 15-year-olds was to actually get a combi van and do it like the full hippie style. And I graduated from the combi. I'm not I'm not in an old VW combi van anymore, thank God. But I I just always thought that I needed somebody else to do that with. And, you know, like when you're 18 or 19, I think the idea of doing it with friends sounds really fun and really exciting. And you don't kind of mind if you're in each other's space and you're sharing a bed. But I'm 31 now, so I'm probably past that stage where I want to be in that close contact with any of my girlfriends anymore for months and months on end every night. And I just thought that I had to have a partner to be able to do it. Australia is really remote once you move away from the East Coast. There are stretches of road where I could be driving for 4 or 5 hours and not go near another town or another service center. So there was definitely that fear there of like, I guess, like safety concerns, and also just the fear of like the loneliness and of needing that feeling of needing somebody there to share that with every night. So yeah, that's kind of what held me back for so long. Um, and I got to a place in the last couple of years where my life kind of shifted pretty dramatically. Like I was a teacher, I was an English high school teacher for almost 8 years. I was living in my hometown and I had a good life, you know, like I had a nice house, I had a good car, like had my dream car actually. I had a Jeep Wrangler, which I just loved to death. I had a lot of really good family and friends around me, and I felt really supported. But I also felt like maybe I wasn't in love with teaching anymore, and I started to look in and explore those options. And part of part of the catalyst for that was actually the sudden passing of my brother, who was only 25 at the time. And he really did always go and like grab life with both hands and take whatever opportunities he could. And it really inspired me after that to realize that life is just too short to be stuck doing the same thing every single day. You know, like I have this saying, can I swear on this podcast? Okay. So I have this saying, it's like same shit, different day. And I don't know if that's an Australian, if that's uniquely Australian or not, but you know, it's kind of like that sarcastic remark that, you know, you get into work and somebody says, oh, how you going? And somebody says, oh, same shit, different day. And I was like, I don't want to live my life like that. Like I've lived like that for the last 8 years. And it's not that there haven't been really fantastic times in those 8 years, but it wasn't enough for me anymore. So I knew that I was leaving teaching. I knew that I was changing careers and moving into life and mindset coaching. I knew that I was going to move out of my hometown, but I didn't know where I wanted to move to or what my life looked like beyond that. And it was actually my sister who, like, we're super close, and she's also the person that challenges me the most, which I love a good challenge. I don't always love it at the time. We've had some doozies over the years, but she's always the person that kind of gently and sometimes not so gently like points out where I'm not in alignment with what I actually want anymore. And she knows me really well, so she can obviously do that, which is fantastic. But she said to me, like, you should revisit the travel thing. And I said, I can't do it on my own. Like, it's too hard. It's, you know, it's too expensive. It's too scary. I don't, it would be too lonely. And she said, like, honestly, in 12 months' time, you're going to be sitting here on the lounge in your house on your own, cooking dinner and watching TV on a Thursday night on your own anyway. And the opposite to that is that you could be watching a sunset in a different location every single night, and you're still going to be on your own, but at least you're seeing something cool every day. And that really hit me because it took me out of a place of like almost like a victim mentality of like thinking that external events could impact me, and it put me back in the driver's seat. No pun intended, but it it really enabled me to see that I actually had a choice in the matter. And if I chose not to travel on my own, that was okay. Nobody was going to judge me for it, but I had to be okay with that choice when I was 50 years old, or when I was 70 years old, or when I was 90 years old and I was looking back on my life. And I had to be okay with saying I made a choice not to travel, and I'm okay with it. And I just realized I wouldn't be okay with it. Um, and something else that I think is really key here to talk about is that was this all sounds like very brave and very courageous, and I just want like people to know that I was just your standard like small town girl. I grew up thinking that I wanted to be married by 24, first kid at 25. I wanted nothing more than the house on a few acres and the white picket fence, and every partner that I had, I really like pushed for that with them and saw that dream. And it wasn't until, the last couple of years when I started really examining that I realized maybe it wasn't the partner themselves that I was so in love with. It was the dream of what the possibility of what they could be to me. And like that's a hard thing to admit to yourself. But that idea, that dream that I would still have somebody who would want to go traveling, like another conversation that I had, and somebody said to me, like, who knows, like you might meet the man of your dreams in 12 months, but they might be on a farm, or they might have a business, or they might have a child, or maybe like they just don't like traveling. And then they could be perfect in every other way, but you'll have sacrificed this dream of yours. And that really hit me as well, because I thought, well, if I do meet the man of my dreams, like, and we ultimately settle down and get married and have children and all of those wonderful things, like I will have given up this part of myself that I've wanted for over 15 years. So I think that really hits home when you put it like that, and you understand that actually you do have choices. And when you sit down and you start to weigh up those choices, like what is the harder choice to make? And like what choice are you going to be happy with in 10 years time, in 20 years time, hell, even in 12 months time? Like which choice are you going to be happier that you made? And it's not to say that any of the in between stuff, like the working out, how to leave my job, like I had uh, like talking to my boss was one of the hardest conversations I'd ever had, after 8 years, and telling her that I was going to move on. And then not long after that, I had senior students who I had taught for 5 years, and I had to tell them that I was actually moving on. And I did wait until the end of the year, but for some of them, I was still leaving halfway through essentially their senior year. And that's hard. Leaving my family, like I have a sister and a little niece and a little like two babies at home, niece and a nephew. My dad, my mum, like my I've got another brother who is in Queensland, with my mum, and I went and spent some time with them at the beginning of the year, and spent a couple of months there, and that was really beautiful to be able to just do that without the pressure of work. But yeah, it's not that it's been easy, and there are definitely moments on the road where I have really missed them, but at the same time, I'm so grateful for this experience and for that like one choice that I made, which was really courageous and got me here to this point.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. I felt like I was listening to the podcast.
That was a lot. Sorry, I just like
that was perfect. I like that, and there's no too much, too little. Like that's perfect. I feel like you just laid out the story of, you even had this idea of when you were younger with that group in school, which is so cool to see that it manifested into real life. So even at the time where you didn't know that's what you actually wanted, like you still had this inner knowing that you wanted it, right? And then as you became more aware of what you did and didn't want in life by looking, like if you put yourself in 10 years or 20 years, 30 years, and you looked back at this time period, what choice would you rather make? Because like you were saying, there's going to be pros and cons in any decision. It's just you pick the ones that resonate most with you or align most with you. And that's all you can do because life will throw challenges your way one way or another. It doesn't matter which other path you choose. It's just the one that you feel is most aligned with you. And it's funny because like baby Haley knew like the path she wanted, but like didn't fully know yet. And I love like seeing that manifest through life. And it's interesting how you said that you weren't really in love with the partners, but more of like the dream with the partners. And at that point, like it would have been settling. It would have been settling because you wanted that dream. Instead, you chose yourself first. And I think that's so, so important for yourself and then for any relationship in the future. You know, it's just choosing yourself first is what's going to lead to the most. I like to say that it unlocks the love within you because if you don't choose yourself first, you're going to always try to find the love elsewhere. But if you choose yourself first and you dig for that inner knowing and that inner love, like, you just unlock all of this love for yourself, for others. And like we said in the beginning, it affects all of our relationships. And yeah, that's beautiful that you made the choice that is the most full of love, and I can tell that you feel it and that you embody it, and yeah, this is just it's a beautiful story, and it's also very inspiring, so thank you for sharing. And so I'm curious though, what do you do when you get lonely?
Yeah, so it doesn't happen all that often. I think a lot of people have this idea that when you're traveling, like you kind of have a lot of time. And look, that may be the case if you are purely traveling. Like I'm also running a business on the road. So there is that element of it. I'm I'm also the kind of person, like I am such a voracious learner. Like I love learning. I think it goes without saying that I'm a bit of a nerd. Like I was an English literature teacher for 8 years. I am constantly reading. I love my mentorships that I'm involved in. I have calls and I have work and um, you know, homework, for lack of a better word, that I'm completing as I'm going. I have a really solid routine for myself, like I wake up in the morning, I do a workout every day without fail. I do my workout, I do some reading, I do some journaling, which has it was something that I really struggled to get into before this year. And now that I've been out on the road, it's become a lot easier. Um, just making sure that I have the time and the space to be able to do it. And sometimes it's not always first thing in the morning. Like, even though I do have time built into my schedule, and I literally have this like in half an hour blocks on my calendar every morning, because otherwise, if I don't make time for it, I kind of just faff about the day and it doesn't get done. So, um, if I know that I'm going to be doing something really amazing, like if I'm going on a hike to a waterfall or something, I will throw my journal in my bag and I'll do it there because you can't help but be inspired and be kind of awestruck by your surroundings. And I feel like it's so much easier to get it out on paper when you are in a beautiful environment like that. Um, as opposed to, just like journaling in the morning from your bed because you feel like you have to. So that has been really great, taking the time and the space to commit to that. So I have like a nighttime routine where I wind down as well. Um, I speak to my family pretty often. Like I FaceTime my sister and the babies a lot. Like I would say every couple of days. I speak to my parents every couple of days as well. Um, I've got friends all over the place that I talk to. I kind of haven't really felt desperately like, you know, when you sometimes you're sitting at home on your own and you just feel that really desperately lonely feeling. I used to feel that quite a lot, and since I've been out on the road, I really truly haven't felt it. And I think there's a few things that contribute to that. One is that I keep myself pretty busy. Two, I just have done so much work on myself now that I can reframe it really quickly. Like if I start to feel that coming on, I can reframe it into like, what can I do for myself? Like if I feel like I need the attention of somebody else, it's usually a mirror that I'm not giving myself attention somewhere. So that has been amazing to look at it through that lens. Like whatever I feel like I need or that I'm missing from somebody else, like where am I not giving myself that thing? Which is amazing, because it might be that I'm, you know, if I want to voice my thoughts, well, where am I not voicing them within myself? Like where am I not admitting to them? If I am looking for distraction, you know, like I'm looking at a sunset, or I'm doing something and I really want somebody to talk to, usually that's like a distraction because I don't have the capacity to sit still in the silence and just appreciate what's happening around me. And even acknowledging that and being aware of it is such a superpower, because now now that I know that, I can overcome it and I can sit there and enjoy the silence. Um, you know, even this morning, I've just gotten back from a really amazing sunset hike. I got a sunrise, sorry, sunrise hike. I got up at 3:30 this morning and hiked up Mount Bruce, which is the second highest peak in the state of Western Australia. And it was so challenging. I also had time constraints because I knew I had to be back here for this interview with you. So I was really like hustling hard to try and get up the mountain. And there was a couple that I overtook about halfway, and it was dark, like it was completely dark. We were just you know, using the moon. I was using the moon to navigate. They had like their head torches and they had music playing and they were talking and laughing to themselves. And I sort of did wonder like how much of the environment they were actually taking in at that point in time, because it was an almost full moon. You could see for like literally miles from up on this peak. Like it was just absolutely stunning. And yeah, I was really appreciative in that moment that I actually was on my own, because I thought if there was somebody else here with me, I would have absolutely been talking to them, or I would have been focused on them rather than on what is actually. I think little reminders and little reframes like that are really, really helpful. And I also think practice, just like making sure that you take the time and you do it regularly and consistently. And you don't have to be traveling to be able to do this. You know, like everybody has hikes or walks near them. Even if you live in the middle of a city, like you can still go for a walk around the city and do it without distraction, do it without earphones in, do it without a podcast, without music. Just really take time to notice like what's happening around you, and notice how things are making you feel, and notice what thoughts are coming up. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing that everybody should do. We live in such a distraction and like social media and like tech heavy world now.
This is making me feel really nerdy now because this is I agree with this more than I can even put into words. Because so I'm a big hiker, and I think you know that, but and I hope the audience knows at this point, but I'm a big hiker. And I, for a long time, would always listen to music. Even when I was hiking with my friends, we'd listen to like an ear pod in each ear.
Yeah,
And
same.
I listen to podcasts or whatever, like anything that I wanted to listen to. And I would say it was in my last relationship where I stopped doing that. And I did it sometimes, if I'm really feeling the podcast or the music, sure. But like I started to go on big hikes without sound, just listening to the river and observing the plants around me. Because if you really take a second to look at the plants, there are so many species of plants in one area. Like there are so many different types of leaves, flowers, just like that's one of my favorite things to look at because it's not the same thing over and over and over. I've never done a hike that early with where the moonlight lit up the path. I would say I'm a little scared of the animal aspect, even though I have some bear spray and like I haven't. My boyfriend gave me an air horn, like an ocean air horn, and some
Amazing.
prayers. So I do have some of the resources, um, but maybe I'll do that sometime. But I agree with you. It's just there's something that's really different about being with yourself on that hike. And I think a lot of people think that you're just alone on that hike, but I think you are with yourself. You are with yourself. And something that I started to practice was talking to myself. So, like, not to fill the air or fill my ears, it was more so just recognizing that I was my own partner. Like, I could keep myself company, and that there was a part of me that I don't know how to put this, that wasn't just me. Is if once I started talking out loud, I noticed that the thoughts out loud were not the same thoughts inside. And I'm like, how does that happen? You know, I just feel like I am with myself as a partner, as a friend.
Yeah.
And that's like when I started to realize that, oh, I'm not lonely right now. I'm just with myself in solitude, having a great time, being mindful, learning about maybe like when there's the the plaques at places where you can learn about
Yes.
the little the animals and the plants and stuff or the glacier movements, all that stuff. Like I love taking those moments to just stop and read. And like you, I personally do a lot of learning every single day as well. There'd be reading podcasts, like exercises, activities, and I feel you on that. And I think that what that can say about your character is that you are so curious about life, and I think that ties into the solitude in hiking is you can't actually fulfill that curiosity if you're just filling your mind with something else like music or podcasts because there's
Yeah.
so much more to learn around you, and you just have to be present in that moment in order to actually take in what's around you and learn about what's around you. And I think
Yeah.
that if people recognize that more, I think solitude becomes easier. I think it
And
becomes
I
easier.
think like the more time you spend on your own, the more you realize that there are different types of solitude. There are different types of lonely. There are though they're very nuanced and they're hard to miss unless you are doing it repeatedly. But you can definitely recognize that, okay, if I'm lonely for human contact, it's speaking on the phone might not satisfy that. Sometimes like as I said, sometimes I'm camping for weeks at a time and I don't see anybody else, or it's like very fleeting instances. So sometimes I will put myself into a situation when I get back into town where I know that there are going to be people. I know that I can talk to them. So caravan parks over here are really great. We have like a really big movement of like retired couples who do like we call them the grey nomads over here, and they like do the lap around Australia, and like they're always up for a chat. So if I put myself in the path of other people like that, I know that I can sit down and I can have a conversation with somebody. Something else like the dating apps is like I'm really, really mindful that I'm not like just sitting there scrolling mindlessly every day. Like that's honestly how I used to be like 5, 6 years ago when I was actively looking for somebody. I don't know that I'm actively looking for anybody right now. So it's not so much that I'm looking for that, but if I get back into town, like, and I've had like a good interaction with somebody, like, yeah, I'll go on a date with somebody and we'll have a meal and we'll have a conversation. And sometimes that can be a really good way of just like getting back into, yeah, like that face-to-face contact with somebody again. But being able to recognize those like triggers, I guess, the things that are making you feel lonely and what kind of lonely it is really important. And I think that a lot of people, they just start to feel the feeling and then they take the feeling and like almost their thoughts start to mirror it, and then they get stuck in this cycle or this loop where they find it really hard to get out of. And one of the best things I ever did, I actually read a fantastic book. There was two of them really. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. And both of those are amazing because what they do, and I think you hinted at this before, they really teach you how to get beyond the thoughts and the feelings that are coming up in your mind. And they teach you that there is those thoughts and feelings are not actually you. So they're almost like part of the robot. They're part of the computer, the trained system that you've been programmed into since you're a small child, but they're not necessarily your soul essence. And what those books did that really helped me was just gave me some really practical strategies of like, how do I get myself out? Like when you can feel those thoughts and those feelings like looping, like how do you get yourself out of that space and bring yourself back to the presence? Like how do you bring yourself back to this current moment? So like even on this hike that I did this morning, which is such a great example of this, like it was so challenging. It was probably the hardest mountain climb I've done. And I could feel myself, like I would get up over the top of one ridge and I would think that that would be the peak. And I was like, yes, I'm almost there. And then I get to the top and then I could see like another one that I had to get over yet. And that happened like 3 or 4 times. And like just noticing the thoughts that were coming up, like, oh my God, this is so hard. My legs are burning. Like, can I make it? Like, maybe I should just stop here, like all of those things that are coming up. And just being able to bring myself back to, can I take one more step? Like in this millisecond of time, can I take one more step? Yes, take a step, take another step, take another step. Like, look up, look at where you are. Like, this is amazing. So I think I've started that practice has become so subconscious to me now because I've been doing it for 5 months that I don't even have to think about it anymore. Like I'm automatically correcting my thoughts as they're coming up. And the beautiful thing about that is that's what we like, if anybody here is into self-development, they would have heard like the neurons that fire together wire together. And like that's how you create new patterns and new habits. You have to get those habits consistently ingrained and cause those neurons to fire together so that they actually then become your new behavior. So I'm at that stage where I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to be really conscious of how I'm feeling in each moment. Like there have been, a lot of challenges on this trip, things with the camper van. Like I had a water pump that broke last week, and the old Haley, like I mean 6 months ago, like that recently, I would have just had such a meltdown over that. And my predominant thoughts would have been, this is too hard on my own. Like, if I only had somebody here, they would be able to fix this and take care of this for me. And like, while that's really nice from like the masculine and the feminine perspective, like at the end of the day, there is nobody else here with me right now. So, like just being able to recognize like it broke, and I kind of called my brother-in-law and we like did some troubleshooting with him, like the few things that I could do without, having specific tools, and kind of realized that it was broken. Like there was nothing there was no quick fix. So I was like, that's mildly inconvenient. And then that was literally it. I went on with my day. Like I adjusted my plans and I was like, okay, well, I'm camping like out on my own. Like I need to get back into town because I need water to drink. Like it was dangerous to be out here without water. I stayed in town for a couple of days. I couldn't get anyone to fix it. I was like, well, I either stay here for another week or I just buy water from the supermarket. I stock up and it'll be inconvenient. Again, like there's nowhere to wash my hands, there's nowhere to have a shower, but I'll have drinking water, which is really all I need. And I'll do that for the week and then I'll come back in when they can fix it. So just making small changes like that they don't seem in the moment when especially when you're living in that mindset of like I'm living in the power of now, like they don't seem big, but then when you look back on how you would have reacted to that previously, it's massive. And I think just from a relationship perspective, like being able to have that inner confidence and being able to have like that mastery of your own emotions and that, I guess, like emotional intelligence is so key, because I know that I'm not going to be projecting those feelings of like hurt or helplessness onto anybody else when I do get into my next romantic relationship.
I'm smiling so much because I literally went through this probably an hour before we got onto this call. So the way I see it is problem solving and emotional regulation, self regulation, and really knowing how to take care of yourself. I think that there's a beautiful balance and combination of being able to take care of yourself and allowing others to take care of you as well. Having like being able to receive that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to have that capability of to do it by yourself. And I completely agree. I think it's those moments right before you make a decision, that that like small moment before you make a decision, you can become aware and decide one way or another, like have that control over choice. And that's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing from this situation. And to relate, this actually relates to a relationship, and you kind of perfectly segued into this. Is I So I told you off the call, I have been experiencing some period moods today, and they can really get me personally. And I was just all of a sudden was going through a moment of being like, am I a good sister? Am I a good friend? I just started to question everything because of my hormones.
Yeah.
And I started to cry and like get so anxious and panicky. And my instinct or desire was to want to text my boyfriend or call my boyfriend, but he's at work right now because he had to work later. And my past Alex would definitely have texted him and being like, I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. Am I a bad sister? Am I a bad girlfriend or whatever? Right. All those thoughts that were coming to my mind at the time. And like in that moment of thinking about what do I have as a choice to do? Do I choose to do that, or do I choose to take responsibility for my own emotions and well-being and problem solve this situation? And I'm so thankful to have that awareness to make that choice now. So what I did instead was I was just like, I'm going to do EFT tapping because I know that's really helpful in just processing these emotions. Let the tears out. Like, it's okay. I can be here for myself. And then once I tapped through the negative emotions and negative statements, and I tapped through the positive ones, and I brought myself back into the present. And after that, I just felt so much calmer. And I didn't feel that pull to have to text Luke, my boyfriend, and freak out. And instead, I just went to the kitchen, made myself some tea, and everything was okay. But
Yeah.
it just took that one split second to make that choice, that different choice. And I completely agree that it is so important, not just for yourself and your well-being, but in the relationship as well. Because if I had texted him freaked out while he was at work, then he would be concerned and nervous about how I was feeling. And he'd probably feel a little guilty that he couldn't like, attend to me right now because I know he cares about me and my well being a lot. And that would make work harder for him when in fact I could have just done the EFT tapping and been okay, like I am right now. So I think it's just so important to be able to do that problem solving and take responsibility
Yeah.
for your well-being. Yeah.
And I think also, uh, like romantic relationships aside, I think we often forget that how our energy is showing up for ourselves is we do project that onto the people around us. So it is your friends, your family, Like my pattern was always like I would have a frustration and then I would call my mum with it. And it wasn't even that I expected her to like problem solve it, but like I just needed to vent to her because I needed to vent to somebody. And it got us into this really weird cycle where she was kind of like, are you calling me to vent today? Or are you like, where are we at? And, you know, the other day, like the water pump went wrong and I was speaking to my mum on the phone and I just kind of like stated the facts to her. Like it didn't, as I said, it didn't actually occur to me to vent or be frustrated about it because I was like, well, I can't do anything about it. Like, and she was like afterwards, are you okay though? Like, are you still enjoying yourself? Like, make sure you enjoy the scenery. And I was like, yeah, actually, like it wasn't until I got off the phone call that I recognized that our relationship has also changed now because I have taken responsibility for my own feelings rather than pushing them onto her. And like that takes some navigating again to like get back into like what a new level of like equal footing again. And it's nice to know that like I can call her for support now, not just to be like a listening wall to my frustration. And it might be that you don't necessarily call somebody else when you're feeling that frustration, but like you have a pattern of coping with your emotions, whatever that looks like. It might look like you using a vice like alcohol or smoking or, you know, drugs or whatever to numb out. It might be sex, it might be whatever, but there's something there that you do. It might be binge watching TV, which is another form of like numbing out. It could be like sitting and scrolling on social media or jumping on, you know, a dating app. I think that it's important to recognize those patterns in ourselves, and that takes some real deep inner work to get to that place where you can see them for what they are and you can admit them. And then also, as you said, like the EFT, like actually knowing the tools. And you're not born knowing the tools and you're not taught them in school. So you either have to like quite honestly, like you have to do like such a shitload of reading and like free podcasts to be able to get the tools that are going to work for you, because they're not they're not personal, they're just general. Like one of the best things I ever did was get into coaching programs and get my own one-on-one coach so that I could have that time with them and they could reflect back to me what I was saying or how I was acting or how I was being and say, is that this is what I'm hearing or this is what I'm seeing from you right now? Is this how you want to be going forward? No? Okay, well, here's what we can do to fix it. You know, like there are so many ways that you can enact a quick change. Like it doesn't like all of this stuff that we're talking about. Like I'm so blessed that I've had 5 months to really hone in and like do a lot of inner work. But at the same time, if you don't have that luxury, if you're, you know, still got your 9 to 5 or you've got kids at home or whatever it is, like you can still do this work. It's going to take longer if you try and do it on your own. So accepting help is like has been the biggest game changer for me, and especially as somebody who was so independent and I was so afraid to admit that I didn't know the answers. So yeah, reaching out to like a coach or a therapist or like a group program and mentorship and just getting in that space and learning from other people has really, I think, sped up the process for me. And it's like when we talk about quantum leaps and just being able to, you know, just collapse a timeline and move ahead on something in a much shorter time period. Like I have done so much of that this year, and it's just simply because of the containers and the people that I'm surrounding myself with. Because when you have people that have already done that step and you're looking up to them and you're asking them like, how did you do it, and they're telling you, like, you get the 3-step process instead of sitting there and trying to work it out and taking 30 steps.
I completely agree. And I can definitely say this from experience as well. First, I love the term collapse timeline because I feel like that's a perfect way to describe what coaching does. Because yes, like you said, you can do it yourself. You totally can. You're very capable and you can listen to all those books and podcasts, listen to the books. Well, I guess you can listen to books nowadays. Read the books, listen to the podcast, and you can figure it out. But it's so relieving when you can just collapse that timeline because there's so much more to life that you can experience from a place of love and peace and just stability and thriving. And I think that it's so not worth missing out on to
Yeah.
experience life like that. And you just realistically, you never know when you're gonna die. You never knew. And then I think my inner knowing knew that I really wanted to thrive and live life to its fullest. And, no one told me to. I just felt that inner knowing of doing that. I think we all have that within us. And coaches can help bring us to the point that we want to be at. And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. And for me, I did a lot of the reading and listening to podcasts, and it got to a point where I did a money manifestation program. And through that, we learned about archetypes and did shadow work through archetypes. And then right after that, I jumped into a self trust program and it overlapped for 2 weeks. And then that's when I went into QCA, our certification program. And I just did so much work in that time period. And if I hadn't gotten into those programs, I would not be the same person today. And I am so, 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 so grateful that I invested. People think that investing might be like a waste of time or a waste of money, and you never know what you're going to get. And it's true. You never know what you're going to get. But that's why you want to like have these conversations with the coaches or, research them. It's also your responsibility to find someone who aligns with you. Don't just do it out of desperation, do it out of alignment. And I think that's when you're going to get the best results too.
Yeah.
So at this point, how can people contact you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, so it's Hayley O'Connell with an underscore at the end. I have a website which is just hayleyo'connell.com. No, yes, www.hayleyo'connell.com. Yeah, those are probably the two biggest channels for getting through to me at this stage. I have one-on-one offerings at the moment. I do have a couple of spaces available, and it's really for the woman who wants to make big changes, and she wants to sort of collapse those timelines and get into a completely new mindset ready to go for 2025, because that's what I'm seeing happening. This is such an expansive time of the year, and I think people have a tendency to like wind down or to just get really caught up with work and finishing up for the year. And I mean, here in Australia, it's the end of our school year as well. We finish our school year in December, so it's a little bit different, I guess, to America. But we, yeah, have this tendency to wind down, and I think that if you just put in the work now, in the next 3 months, I saw somewhere it was like 105 days left in the year. So if you could just put in the work now, like you could enter the new year as a completely different person. And I think when we start talking about, like I wanted to live from a place of fulfillment, or like I was a new person, like if we break it down and make it really tangible for people, for the listeners, I think, just painting that picture, like I was working 9 to 5, but I was working so much more than that because I was a school teacher. So I was bringing marking home. I was always stressed. I had to-do lists for my to-do lists. I never felt like my house was clean enough. I never felt like the clothes I was wearing were good enough. Like I was easily the most like put together teacher at the school, and I had kids always commenting, and I had like an entire walk-in wardrobe and another wardrobe full of clothes and shoes, and I still didn't feel like it was enough. So it was almost this feeling of wanting more, but what I had wasn't enough. Like I would go to my sister's and I would be sitting there and I'd be enjoying it, but I'd be thinking, when is it my turn? And I'd be looking at other people on holidays. Like I went to Bali for my 30th. Like I went over there with some friends. We went over for a couple of weeks. I spent a couple of grand, and like I hardly remember the trip now. I still came back and I still felt really like stressed and anxious, like it didn't actually take those feelings away. And even while I was over there, there were definitely moments where I felt disconnected from it. Like I was thinking I should be enjoying this more. And it's not that I wasn't enjoying it, but I was like, it doesn't feel like it's sinking in. And now I've gotten to a place where, as I said, like I quit my permanent job, which had a really good salary. I took a risk. I started studying again. I started a new business. I've never had anything to do with business before. So that was all completely new. And I'm, you know, working my way through the traveling as well. And I've done all of these really big, exciting things, and none of that would have been possible. Like I was honestly too scared to drive, like, and do a weekend away on my own 12 months ago. So for me to even be able to, yeah, like as I said, it's been 5 months now to be traveling like completely on my own. It's a massive step. And that growth happens when you do the work and when you do the learning. And I think like if you have listeners that are sitting there and they're questioning like an aspect of their lives, or they have a relationship that's not working, or there's something that they want more of and they're not getting it and they don't feel confident enough to go after it, like that's your indication that, instead of spending that money on a holiday that you hope is going to fix the problem, like it's not, because the problem is inside of you. And when you understand that and you take the time and take the investment and commit to it, like you actually bring that holiday feeling to every single day of your life, so that you don't need to necessarily take a holiday. You get to enjoy your holiday when you choose to take one, but you don't need to. You're not counting down the days of your life waiting for it.
That made my heart so happy. That's so that's so beautiful because so many of us think that we need to get away. Like you said, that it's a need to get away, and we just never come back feeling as fulfilled and whole as we seek when we go there. And like you said, even when we're there, we're thinking, I should be having more fun. Or you might be thinking, oh, I'm in Bali right now, but I actually want to be on a mountain hiking now in this moment. And you just take yourself away from the present. And when you work on yourself internally, that's when you can really be in the present. I think that we feel unsafe to be in our bodies, or we're not connected with our bodies enough, and we're just constantly leaving and going to another place. And that
Yeah.
internal work brings us back into the present moment. It makes us feel safe and grounded in our bodies. And it's so much more than that. That's just one aspect of it. So much more than that. And yeah, I completely agree with this. And there was something else I wanted to comment on, and my notes are all over the place. um, oh my goodness, what was it? I think it's just more so the idea of that we always are never going to feel satisfied unless we feel that way internally. And
Yeah.
it really, honestly, I was thinking about it yesterday a lot, which is funny that you mentioned this. I was just thinking, I had a moment of, oh, I wish I could be doing this right now. And then I'm like, actually, let's think about what we're grateful for. I have a place right now that is a calmer, more like aligned with me place than I've ever had before. I have this free furniture. I am currently living out the career of my dreams. There's so many things that I was looking for in my past self, and I was now in this current self thinking, let's go find something else. And then I brought myself back and be like, no, 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 no. And I think that's the beauty of the internal work. The internal work, you said earlier, practice. It's practice. It's actively and consistently working on it. And it
Yeah.
sounds like a lot and scary, and it is a lot and scary. It is, and it is so worth it. And you notice, as long as you are aware of those changes, you feel more empowered because you start to realize that you have choice. And with choice, you have freedom. And people seek freedom externally all the time. And freedom is so only internal. It is only internal. And yeah, so I think I want to wrap this up here. We had a lot here. I think that the listeners are going to take away a lot from this. And I think they're going to be inspired by your story because I know that I am. One day you'll find me on a renovated bus somewhere in the country. I almost bought one day because I had the money, but I'm like, I don't know yet though, but yeah, so maybe you'll see me doing that one day.
Amazing.
And yeah, so to the listeners, if you liked this episode, please rate it and review it, send a comment, and also just send a DM to either Haley or I and tell us about your takeaways. What did you find interesting and what was helpful to you and what your next steps are? Because that is the most important part. And let us be accountable for that for you because we all need some accountability. And that is part of the beauty of coaching as well. So, yeah, so thank you for being on my podcast. This was a beautiful conversation. And I'm so glad we did this.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Yay.